I was watching a movie the other day, and in the movie, this woman found herself in this really deep hole. And I immediately made the connection, as I do with lots of movies, about what a parallel it was to infidelity. Whether you're an unfaithful or whether you're a betrayed, infidelity is in many ways like this giant hole. And I think in many ways we don't like the fact that when we're in a hole, it forces us to do a few things. Number one, and I don't know if you ever, grew up digging holes or climbing, or when you're in a hole, there is this immediate desire and need and knee-jerk reaction to focus up and to look up, like, how am I going to get out of this hole? And at some level, it's really productive, because if you stay fixated on the size of the hole, how dark and smelly and ugly and dirty and horrendous the hole is, or how you got into the hole, although in infidelity recovery you do need to understand how you did get into this hole. But if you stay fixated on the darkness around you, you're going to stay stuck. And I will tell you honestly, there are temptations when you're in the hole of infidelity to really just sit there and be stuck. And we'll dig, but sometimes we'll dig out a step to kind of just sit on, not use to climb out. And there are days in recovery where, I don't know that we're digging to get out, we're digging to build a bench to simply kind of sit there and struggle with self-pity or self-rejection or self-loathing, or maybe just hatred or unforgiveness or bitterness. And there eventually comes a time that if you want to get out, I'm sorry, when you're in the hole of infidelity, you are not going to be airlifted out. You are going to have to dig yourself out. Now, the good news is, when you're in that hole, there's some wonderful tools to dig yourself out. There's shovels, there's pickaxes, there's digging tools like the boot camp that I mentioned, or the online courses at affairrecovery.com, or the EMS weekend, or there's lots of other programs that are out there as well that you can utilize. But when you are in a hole, like the gruesome, disgusting, incredibly dark hole of infidelity, it can seem like there is no way out. But I encourage you, number one, to look up. Now, whether you subscribe to faith or not, looking up, I think, is in many ways reflective of the fact that you have to begin to focus on something other than the darkness and the horrible feelings that you're struggling with. Number two is you're going to get dirty. You're going to get dirt underneath your nails. It's going to be exhausting at times. And I will tell you, not everybody wants to dig out. Some people would rather sit in the hole. And lately I've talked to a pretty good amount of unfaithful spouses who, they'll dig. And they'll dig under a few circumstances. They will decide to dig if these things are in place. A lot of times we as unfaithful, number one, we will dig as long as we know how long it's going to take. I remember saying to Samantha all the time, well, how long is it going to be like this? How long are we not going to have sex? How long are you going to continue to ask me these questions? How long, how long, how long? And all I did was, unfortunately, dig myself deeper when I was trying to get out, when in reality, all I was doing was digging the hole because I would be willing to dig only if I knew how long I was going to dig. And so many unfaithful take that same approach, and all you're doing is making it worse. Number two, and forgive my smiling, you'll realize I smile a lot when I'm really tapping into my own personal dysfunction, is that I would dig like many unfaithful as long as Samantha guaranteed me that she was willing to stay. And I'm sorry, that's completely unfair to the betrayed, because the betrayed has options, and the betrayed doesn't have to guarantee to stay. I would suggest that the betrayed be willing to say, look, I'll give it X amount of time, and we'll kind of either pray through this or work through this or both, and we'll take some time in the future and decide. But If you, the unfaithful, are telling your betrayed spouse, I'll dig, we'll get out of this hole, but you have to guarantee that you'll never leave, I'm sorry, it's unrealistic, it's unfair, and you are controlling your spouse, you are bullying your spouse, and recovery doesn't work that way. And another thing that I did in recovery is I was willing to dig on my terms. I would decide who the counselor was. I would decide how often we would go. I would decide how much money it was going to be. And Samantha finally said, no, you're not in charge. The last 10 years you've been in charge, and here we are. You're not in charge anymore. And that didn't mean she was taking the reins, but that just meant we were going to do this together, and she was going to have a say in matters, and I needed to wake the heck up and understand that. So a lot of times we, the unfaithful, will dig if things are on our terms, but I'm sorry, recovery doesn't work that way. Another condition that we, the unfaithful, like to put on digging is, listen, man, I'm in it. I'll do whatever it takes. I'm going to dig as long as it doesn't inconvenience me. And I have to be so direct with people all the time in that recovery is inconvenient. Trying to save your marriage, trying to do recovery work for yourself or for your family is going to be inconvenient. And you, as an unfaithful, better start embracing how inconvenient recovery will be. If you will only do recovery work when it's convenient, you are going to sabotage your recovery. You're not going to gain much ground at all, and you're going to wake up one day and go, what the heck has happened? How did I end up in this not just mess, but mess that is worse than it was 6 months ago or 3 months ago? Because you lived by convenience and feeling, and you didn't live with a desperation to dig yourself out of the hole that you were in. Finally, for both spouses, sometimes we will dig as long as the quality of life stays the same. And it doesn't work that way. Your quality of life is going to suffer. You're going to have to spend a pretty good amount of money. You're going to have to go into some debt maybe. You're going to have to sacrifice if you're going to dig yourself out. I remember we were paying 2 mortgages. I had no job. Samantha certainly wasn't working because our kids were so small. And I was scared to death. And so when I wrote a check, if you will, because at the time all of our credit cards were blown up. We had a little bit of savings, and so we decided to do the EMS weekend. I was scared to death, and I remember saying, God, I remember telling God, this better be worth it. It was inconvenient. When we were seeing Rick every few weeks or so, writing, checks was tough until we started making some money, and it's going to be inconvenient. It has to be, because you are deciding that you are no longer going to be a prisoner to your circumstances. You are deciding you're no longer going to be a prisoner to the pain and the hurt and the trauma that you're facing. It's going to be inconvenient, financially, emotionally, maritally, just in terms of your entire lifestyle. But it is worth it. I absolutely will tell you, it is worth it. Remember, it's not always going to be this dark. It's not always going to be this dirty. It's not always going to feel like it feels right now. But you got to decide that you're willing to dig.